The attorney's hands trembled as he slid the leather portfolio across his mahogany desk. His face had gone white, like he'd seen a ghost. "Mrs. Whitmore," he whispered, "this trust account has been active since 1952. Your grandmother established it the year you were born." I stared at the number on the page. $89 million. The same week my husband took everything, my business, my home, even turned my own son against me. I was living in a studio apartment with furniture from Goodwill, and now this. Let me go back to the beginning, because you need to understand how a woman can spend 38 years building a life with someone, only to discover it was all a lie. I met Robert Whitmore in 1986, at a charity gala in Boston. I was 26, just starting my interior design business. He was 29, a rising star at a prestigious law firm, handsome, charming, from old Connecticut money. When he asked me to dance, I felt like Cinderella. 6 months later, we were married in a ceremony that cost more than my parents' house. Those early years were good. I thought they were good. Robert worked long hours at the firm, eventually making partner. I built my design business from nothing into something respected. Featured in Architectural Digest twice. Clients in 8 states. We had one son, Trevor, born in 1989, a golden child. Perfect grades, Harvard legacy admission, law school just like his father. The money came from both sides. My business brought in 6 figures annually by the mid-90s. Robert's partnership meant serious income. We're talking high 6 figures, sometimes breaking into 7 during good years. We bought our dream home in 2001, a stunning colonial revival in Newton, 2,200 square feet, professionally landscaped gardens that I designed myself. We paid cash, $3 million. Over the years, we accumulated more. A vacation home on the Cape, worth about $1 million to $8 million. Investment properties. My business expanded, and by 2020, I had 12 employees and a studio space in downtown Boston, worth another $1 million to $2 million. Our retirement accounts were healthy. Conservative estimate, we had about $6 million in assets. Not Bezos money, but comfortable. More than comfortable. I should have noticed the changes in Robert sooner. Around 2019, when I was 61 and he was 64, he started talking about retirement. "We've worked so hard, Maggie," he'd say. "Let's enjoy our golden years." It made sense. He'd been practicing law for 40 years. I was ready to slow down too, maybe keep a few select clients, spend more time gardening. But then came the small things. He insisted on consolidating our finances, said it would be easier for estate planning. Being a trusting wife of 33 years, I signed papers he brought home. "Just updating our trust documents," he assured me. Standard stuff. He was the attorney after all. I trusted him. Trevor got married in 2020, right before the pandemic. To Vanessa, a woman I never quite warmed to. She was beautiful, ambitious, worked in private equity, but there was something calculating in her eyes, something cold. Mother Margaret, she'd call me, with just enough sweetness to mask the condescension. At their wedding, I overheard her telling someone, "The old house in Newton would be perfect for us. Such good bones." I told myself I was being paranoid. When I mentioned it to Robert, he laughed it off. "You're imagining things, darling. Vanessa adores you." The real changes started in 2022. Robert became distant. He'd take phone calls in his study with the door closed. He started going to the gym 4 times a week. At 65 years old, suddenly obsessed with fitness. When I asked if I could join him, he said it was his time, and I should respect that. The man who'd never lifted a weight in his life. Then the criticism began. My cooking wasn't as good as it used to be. I was letting myself go. I was spending too much time at work, not enough time at home. But when I suggested taking a trip together, he was always too busy. "Big case coming up," he'd say. He'd been retired for 2 years. I tried everything. New recipes, lost 15 pounds, planned romantic evenings. Nothing worked. He grew more irritable, more distant. Some nights, he didn't come home until past midnight, claiming he was playing poker with old colleagues. In March 2023, I came home early from a client meeting. I found Robert in his study, hunched over his laptop, quickly closing it when I walked in. "Jesus, Margaret, don't you knock?" The venom in his voice shocked me. This is my home too, I said quietly. Is it? He stood up, straightened his tie. We should talk about that. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? He looked at me, and I saw it. The coldness. The stranger behind my husband's eyes. I think you know this marriage has been over for a while, Margaret. We're just going through the motions. We? My voice cracked. I've been trying, Robert. You're the one who's pulled away. That's your perception. He walked past me. My attorney will be in touch. His attorney. He'd hired a divorce lawyer without telling me. The man was an attorney himself, with connections throughout Boston's legal community, and he'd hired representation without giving me a chance to fight for our marriage. I should have been smarter. I should have hired my own lawyer immediately. But I was in shock, grief-stricken. I truly believed we could fix this. I suggested counseling. He refused. I begged him to reconsider. He moved into the Cape House the next day. 3 weeks later, I was served with divorce papers, and Trevor, our son, called. Mom, I think you should know. Dad's been unhappy for a long time. Maybe it's better this way. Trevor, we can work this out. Marriages go through rough patches. Mom. His voice was cold, so much like Robert's. Dad said you've been impossible to live with. The constant nagging, the controlling behavior. Vanessa and I have seen it too. My own son. My boy. What are you talking about? We think you should make this easy on everyone. Just sign the papers. Don't drag this out. I hired an attorney, finally. Patricia Chen, a tough woman who came recommended by a colleague. She reviewed the papers Robert filed and her face went pale. Margaret, when did you sign these financial documents? She showed me copies of papers I'd signed 2 years earlier. Robert said they were estate planning updates. Why? Because you essentially gave him control of everything. The house is in a trust he manages. Your business property, same thing. The retirement accounts were restructured. She looked at me with pity. Did you have your own attorney review these before signing? I felt sick. He's my husband. He's an attorney. I trusted him. That trust may have cost you everything. The next 6 months were hell. Robert's attorney, a shark named Mitchell Brennan who'd been Robert's golf buddy for 20 years, painted me as an unstable, financially irresponsible woman who'd squandered marital assets. They claimed my business was failing, that I'd made poor investment decisions, that I'd been emotionally abusive. None of it was true. But Robert had documentation. Emails I'd sent about business expenses he deemed frivolous. Texts where I'd asked him about his whereabouts that he framed as obsessive monitoring. Statements from Trevor and Vanessa about my controlling nature and inability to accept their marriage. The judge was old-fashioned, a man in his 70s who played golf at the same club as Robert and Mitchell, Judge Howard Prescott. I saw them chatting like old friends in the courthouse hallway before our hearing. When we went before the judge, I felt the proceedings were predetermined. Patricia fought hard, but every objection was overruled. Every piece of evidence I presented was dismissed as irrelevant or hearsay. The verdict came down in September 2023. I sat in that courtroom, surrounded by wood paneling and the smell of old law books, and listened to Judge Prescott destroy my life. The Newton property, valued at $3 million, shall be transferred to Mr. Whitmore, as it is held in the trust he manages. My home, the house I'd decorated, where I'd raised our son, where I'd planted every rosebush and peony, the Cape Cod property, valued at $1,800,000, shall also be transferred to Mr. Whitmore for the same reason. Our summers, the beach where Trevor learned to swim, the commercial property in Boston, currently housing Mrs. Whitmore's business, valued at $1,200,000, shall be sold, with proceeds divided equally after the trust debt is satisfied. My business, my life's work, retirement accounts, totaling approximately $2,300,000, shall be split, with 60% to Mr. Whitmore, who was the primary earner throughout the marriage. They took it all. In one afternoon, 38 years of building a life together ended with me getting maybe $700,000 after legal fees, taxes, and the mysterious trust debts that Robert's attorney claimed existed. But the worst part came next. Furthermore, regarding the claims of emotional distress by Mr. Whitmore and his son, Mrs. Whitmore is ordered to attend anger management counseling and is advised to have no contact with her son or daughter-in-law for a period of 6 months to allow for family healing. I couldn't even speak. Patricia stood up, objecting, but Judge Prescott had made his ruling. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Robert was in the hallway with Mitchell, shaking hands, laughing about something. He saw me, and his face showed nothing. No regret, no sadness, just satisfaction. Trevor was there too, with Vanessa. I tried to approach him, to hug my son, but Vanessa stepped between us. The judge said no contact, Mother Margaret. We'll respect his wishes. The smirk on her face told me everything. This had been planned. I lost everything in a single day. 3 houses became none. 6 million became 700,000, maybe less after everything was calculated. My son wouldn't speak to me. My husband walked away with the wealth we'd built together and a young girlfriend I'd later discover, 28 years old, a paralegal from his old firm. The depression hit hard. I was 63 years old, essentially homeless. I rented a studio apartment in Malden for $1,800 a month. 1 room, a hot plate instead of a kitchen. Furniture from thrift stores because everything in our homes was marital property that Robert got to keep. I couldn't work. My business was forced to close when the building sold. My employees, people I'd mentored for years, lost their jobs. The shame was crushing. My colleagues whispered. My clients disappeared. I'd become the cautionary tale. Patricia tried to appeal, but without money for legal fees, I couldn't fight. The $700,000 I was supposed to receive kept getting delayed. Trust administration issues, Mitchell Brennan's office said. Months passed. My savings dwindled. I ate ramen noodles and rice, lost 25 pounds I couldn't afford to lose. Trevor sent a single text in November. Hope you're doing okay, Mom, but you need to respect our boundaries. Dad's happier than I've ever seen him. Maybe you should find your own happiness too. My own son. I'd held him when he was born. Stayed up nights when he had nightmares. Helped him write his college essays. And he was telling me to leave his father alone so Robert could be happy with his girlfriend. The nights were the worst. I'd lie in that studio apartment, listening to sirens and traffic, wondering where it all went wrong. Was I really the terrible person they said I was? Had I been controlling? Abusive? My mind replayed 38 years of marriage, looking for signs I'd missed. I thought about ending it. I'm not ashamed to admit that. One night in December, I stood on my 4th-floor balcony and wondered if anyone would even notice if I was gone. But I didn't jump. Something in me, some stubborn spark, refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, I started going through old boxes I'd been allowed to take from the house. Photo albums. My grandmother's things that Robert hadn't wanted. She'd passed away when I was 12, in 1964. I barely remembered her. But going through her belongings gave me comfort. A connection to someone who'd loved me unconditionally. In a shoebox of old letters, I found something strange. An envelope addressed to me, in my grandmother's handwriting, for Margaret Rose on her 65th birthday. Do not open before. It was sealed with red wax. The envelope was dated 1952, the year I was born. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a letter and a small key. My dearest Margaret Rose, if you are reading this, I am long gone, and you have reached an age of wisdom. I pray your life has been full of love and joy, but I know life is complicated. I know there may have been struggles. When you were born, I established something for you. Your grandfather thought I was being dramatic, but I've seen too many women left with nothing. I took $50,000 from my inheritance and put it somewhere safe. Somewhere it could grow. Somewhere no husband, no child, no one could touch it but you. The key enclosed will open safe deposit box 847 at Boston First National Bank. Inside, you'll find account information. This money is yours. Always has been, always will be. Use it wisely. Use it to be free. With all my love, Grandmother Eleanor. I sat in my studio apartment, holding a letter written 72 years ago, and cried. The next morning, I went to Boston First National Bank, established in 1792, still standing in the financial district. The bank manager, a young woman named Priya, looked skeptical when I explained about the safe deposit box. "Ma'am, That box number was issued in the 1950 seconds. Let me check our records. She typed into her computer. Her eyes widened. Oh my. Mrs. Whitmore, this box is indeed registered to you. It was established by Eleanor Whitmore in 1952 with instructions that only you could access it after your 65th birthday. I'm only 63. The computer system shows override provisions for documented financial hardship. May I see some identification? I showed her my license, my old business cards, everything I had. She made calls, consulted with superiors. 2 hours later, she led me to the vault. The safe deposit box was old, brass, covered in a thin layer of dust. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a single folder. Account statements. Boston First National Trust, account number 8471952MW. Established by Eleanor Whitmore. Beneficiary Margaret Rose Whitmore. Original deposit, $50,000. Investment instructions. Conservative Growth Fund. Reinvest all dividends. Priya helped me read the documents. She pulled up the account on a specialized terminal. Then she went pale. Mrs. Whitmore, this account has been growing, untouched, for 72 years. How much? My voice was barely a whisper. She swiveled the screen toward me. I saw the number but couldn't process it. It looked fake, too many digits. Current balance, $89,127,483.67. $89 million. I don't remember what happened next. I think I fainted. When I came to, I was in a chair in the manager's office with people hovering over me, offering water. Is it real? I asked Priya. She nodded, showed me the statements again. Compound interest over 72 years. Conservative investments that weathered every market crash. Dividends reinvested quarterly. The magic of time and money. My grandmother had given me freedom from beyond the grave. The next weeks were a blur. I hired a new attorney, not Patricia, though she'd done her best. I needed someone ruthless, someone who understood financial forensics. I found him through a referral from Priya. Daniel Morse, a former prosecutor who'd made his name taking down white-collar criminals. When I showed him my grandmother's trust account, he smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Mrs. Whitmore, this changes everything. This is your separate property, established before your marriage. Never commingled with marital assets. Your ex-husband has no claim to any of it. Can we reopen the divorce case? Better than that. Let me look into how exactly Mr. Whitmore restructured your assets. Something about this whole case smells wrong. Daniel hired forensic accountants, private investigators. Within 3 weeks, they uncovered the scheme. Robert hadn't just prepared for divorce. He'd been planning it for 4 years. Since 2019, he'd been systematically moving assets into trusts and accounts he controlled. The estate planning documents I'd signed gave him power of attorney over properties and investments. He'd used that power to create debt obligations that didn't exist, then used those debts to claim the assets were worth less than they appeared. Worse, Mitchell Brennan wasn't just his attorney. He was his business partner. They'd bought the commercial property that housed my business through a shell company. They'd planned to force its sale, split the profits, and I'd never know. Judge Prescott? He'd received campaign contributions from both Robert and Mitchell for his last election. $15,000 each. Not illegal, but certainly unethical given he never recused himself. Trevor's involvement was more painful. Vanessa worked in private equity. She'd helped structure the shell companies. They'd been promised the Newton House once the divorce was final. My son had sold out his mother for real estate. Daniel filed new motions. Fraud, conspiracy, breach of fiduciary duty. We demanded the entire divorce settlement be voided. But more than that, with my new resources, we investigated every detail, and we found it. Robert's girlfriend, the 28-year-old paralegal, her name was on property documents dated 6 months before our separation. He'd bought her a condo in Brookline, using marital funds. That was adultery and financial fraud. The shell company? The accountants found evidence that Robert and Mitchell had been planning it since 2018, before the divorce filing, premeditated asset hiding. Judge Prescott's campaign contributions? When combined with evidence, He'd played golf with Robert and Mitchell during the divorce proceedings. We had grounds for judicial misconduct. Daniel arranged a meeting with Mitchell Brennan's office. I insisted on being there. We walked into that mahogany-paneled conference room, and I saw Mitchell's face change when he recognized Daniel. "Mr. Morse, I don't believe we have any business together." Daniel smiled that cold smile again. "Actually, we do. I represent Margaret Whitmore, and I have some documents you'll want to see." He laid it all out. The shell companies, the forensic accounting showing asset hiding, the girlfriend's condo purchased with marital funds, the judge's campaign contributions, the conspiracy between attorney and client. "Here's what's going to happen," Daniel said calmly. "You're going to recommend to your client that he agree to a new settlement. Mrs. Whitmore gets the Newton house, the Cape house, full value of her business property, and her fair share of retirement accounts. You're going to return every penny of legal fees she paid, plus damages. And you're going to issue a public apology." Mitchell laughed. "And why would we do that?" "Because if you don't, I'm filing criminal fraud charges. I'm reporting you to the Massachusetts Bar Association, and I'm sending all of this documentation to every major newspaper in Boston. Your reputation will be destroyed, your license will be revoked, and your client will face felony charges." The laughter died. "You can't prove." "I can prove all of it. I have emails between you and Robert dating back 4 years. I have financial records. I have testimony from the paralegal about the condo purchase. I have a private investigator's documentation of Judge Prescott's golf games during active litigation." Daniel leaned forward. "You gambled on Mrs. Whitmore being too broke and too broken to fight back. You lost. The new settlement came within a week. Robert returned the Newton house and the Cape property. I got $2 million in cash for the business property and legal damages. The retirement accounts were split 50-50, the way they should have been originally. And I kept my grandmother's trust. All $89 million of it. But the legal consequences were just beginning. Mitchell Brennan was disbarred after a Bar Association investigation. His law license revoked permanently. Last I heard, he's working as a legal consultant, a fraction of his former income. Judge Prescott was censured and pressured to retire early. His reputation in tatters. Robert faced criminal fraud charges. Daniel made sure of that. The district attorney's office, embarrassed by the corruption, prosecuted aggressively. Robert pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He got 18 months in a minimum security facility and 5 years probation. His law license also revoked. The girlfriend left him immediately when the money dried up. Turns out 28-year-olds aren't interested in 67-year-old ex-convicts with no income. The hardest part was Trevor. When the truth came out, when the evidence of Vanessa's involvement and their plan to take the Newton house hit the newspapers, I waited. I didn't reach out. The court order prohibited it anyway. But in March 2024, a year after this nightmare started, my son called. "Mom?" His voice was small, like when he was a little boy. "Hi, sweetheart. I saw the news. I read the court documents. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know all of it. Vanessa told me you'd been hiding money, that you'd been abusive, that Dad was the victim, and you believed her." Silence. "Then I believed Dad. He's my father. He's an attorney," I thought. His voice broke. "I thought I was protecting him. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry." I wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much he'd hurt me, how his betrayal cut deeper than Robert's because I'd given birth to him, raised him, loved him unconditionally, and he'd thrown me away for a house. But he was my son, my only child. "Trevor, I need time. I need you to understand the damage that was done. I need you to prove that you see me as your mother, not just as someone who wronged your father." "I know. I told Vanessa we're done. I'm filing for divorce. She's not who I thought she was. She's actually trying to claim she had no idea about the shell companies, but I found emails, Mom. She knew everything. I'm not going to say I told you so. You should. You saw through her from day one. We met for coffee in April. It was awkward, painful. He cried. I cried. But it was a start. Vanessa did try to claim innocence, but the forensic evidence was clear. She lost her job in private equity. Trevor's divorce from her was finalized in September 2024. He lost money in that divorce too. Karma has a sense of humor. As for me, I'm rebuilding. I bought back my studio space in Boston with cash, reopened my design business, hired back some of my old employees. The work feels good again, purposeful. I kept the Newton house. Walking back into my home, my real home, after a year in that studio apartment, I sat in the garden I designed and cried for hours. The peonies had bloomed without me. The Cape House, I sold. Too many memories of a life that turned out to be a lie. I donated the proceeds to a foundation that helps women going through divorce. $2 million to make sure other women don't end up eating ramen in studio apartments while their husbands laugh with their attorneys. Robert sent me a letter from prison. I still have it, unopened, in my desk drawer. Trevor asked if I was going to read it. Maybe someday, I told him. But not now. Not while he's looking for forgiveness he hasn't earned. The trust fund my grandmother left me? I'm careful with it. I invested most of it, set up foundations, created scholarship funds for women in design. I bought a beautiful penthouse in Back Bay with a view of the Charles River. I travel. I'm learning Italian. I adopted 2 rescue dogs. But the best part? I'm free. Truly free. At 64 years old, I'm finally living the life my grandmother hoped I'd have. Last week, I visited her grave for the first time in years. I brought peonies, her favorite flower. I sat on the grass beside her headstone and told her everything. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for seeing what I couldn't. Thank you for protecting me, even after you were gone. Thank you for teaching me that freedom is the greatest gift a woman can have." The spring breeze rustled through the cemetery trees. Somewhere, a cardinal sang, and I felt, for the first time in years, peace. Not because I got revenge. I didn't. The system punished Robert and his accomplices. Karma, as they say, is patient but thorough. But because I learned what my grandmother knew 72 years ago, that a woman's worth isn't measured by her marriage, her husband, or even her children. It's measured by her ability to stand on her own, to rebuild, to survive. I'm 64 years old. I lost 38 years to a man who saw me as an asset to be managed and discarded. But I have my freedom, my dignity, and my future. And that, my grandmother would say, is worth more than $89 million. Though the $89 million doesn't hurt,